yesterday. So we have started off with the data model build. First, we discussed about the reporting options available in cloud, and we have started off with BIP reports yesterday. And let's go back to the report that we were building. And how do you go to the reports and analytics work area? You can go to tools and click on reports and analytics work area. Click on browse catalog. That will take you to a BA server. And this is where we started creating our report. So we've created a new folder for your batch under custom. Let's go to that folder. It's TF15, expand it, and you could see that there is a BIP folder inside it. Expand it, and there is a data model that we have started off with yesterday. So edit it. And we have discussed at length as to how you can identify the tables for a given use case and how to join them. And I've also explained how to use multiple data sets along with the join conditions. So as you can see here, how many queries do we have? We have 4 queries in total. And G1 is the main query. We can rename the groups as well. So you can go to properties and you can say G1 invoice header. And you have got another group which will pull the lines of an invoice. Okay, so we can call it as, so to change the group name, you click on the drop down and you go to properties and you can give a name you want. So you can say G invoice lines, copy the group name, paste it in the display name as well, click OK. And we have 2 more queries apart from the invoice header and lines, and these 2 queries are basically used to pull the bill to information and ship to information of an invoice. So to pull that information, we have added a query to pull the bill to details, and we've added another one to pull the ship to details. So the invoice base table which stores the invoice information will have a reference to a bill to table. It will have a bill to site use ID and ship to site use ID. So with the help of these IDs, we will try to, we have added inquiries to pull the address. So this query is slightly complicated. You can probably go through it at a later point in time once you practice the initial use case. Okay, so it's basically linking up all the TCA tables and get the customer name and address, as simple as that. And let's rename these groups as well. So we'll call them as GBill2. And we will call the other one as GShip2. It's not required as such, but yeah, if you rename them, it will be meaningful, or you without getting into the details, you get to know what that group is all about. Okay, and when you have multiple data sets or queries, so each box that you're seeing here, these are called data sets. The data sets, if they are linked, you can establish that linkage with the help of a common column. So in this case, to link the header and lines, we have used customer transaction ID as a link, and all we did is, how do you establish a data link? Pick up a common column in the header and the lines tables. Pick up that column in both the groups and drag and drop the column from the header onto the lines, and that will establish the link. And the same way we establish the link between invoice header with a bill to query and invoice header with the ship to query. If I go to the data tab now, and how do I execute this data model? I need to go to data model and click on view. Change it to table view, and you could see that we're getting 4 records now. So one for each query. The first one is pulling the invoice details. Second one is pulling the invoice line details. Third one is pulling the bill to customer details along with the address. Fourth one is pulling the ship to address details. So we have the information that we need for our report, right? And I am expecting, so a client has given me a sample output, and he told me that the output should look like this. He told me that the output of the report should look like this. Okay, so I have built this data model, and let's see how the output will look like. Or before we move on to that, there is one more thing that I need to explain. So whenever we run the data, or whenever we run the data model and click on view, it is always printing 5001 transaction number, right? And it is always printing this transaction number from this BU. Why is it happening that way? That's because if you look at the main query, we have hard coded the business unit name and the transaction number. So if you look at the main query, what did we do in here? We have the business unit name hard coded, and we have the transaction number hard coded. So since these are hard coded, it is always pulling the information from the report is always pulling the information about this transaction from this BU. I don't want to have these hard coded. I want to let user select a business unit and select the transaction number that he wants to print. So that means I need to change this to parameters. So to change these, to remove these hard codings and change them to parameters, what I can do is there are 2 ways you can do it. One way is you can go to parameters tab here, and you can click on the plus icon and add in a parameter. And after that, you can use that parameter in the query. But there is another easy way rather than you creating parameter explicitly. And what is that way? So you go to the main query, invoice query, and you replace this hard coding. Okay, you take it off and you put a colon. Colon indicates that you want to create it as a bind variable, which gets created automatically as a parameter. So put a colon and start with P underscore to indicate that it's a parameter. You have to follow the proper naming conventions. And you can say BU name. So that is a business unit name, right? So put a colon, P underscore, BU name, and do the same thing for transaction number as well. Take out the hard coding and call it as transaction number. Why do we need this column? That's because only if you use column, this parameter will get created as this value will be created as a parameter, and that whatever value that user enters will be replaced in the query when it gets executed. So you copy this query and you go back to the AR invoice header data model and you click on the edit icon and you paste it back in here. So all we did is replace the hard codings with the parameters. Click OK. And when you click OK, it asks you whether you want to use create parameters for these 2 bind variables. Tick both of them and say and click on yes. And you will notice that 2 parameters are created. So you can make a BU name as a first one. And you will have a data type attached, a parameter type, and you can assign a default value as well. So for BU name, let's assign Dinesh US Retail BU as a default value. And for transaction number, we can assign 5001 as a default value. And if you scroll up, there will be a display label for each and every parameter. So you need to enter the display label as well. If you forgot to enter the display label, you will be able to see the parameters. You will be able to see the boxes, but you won't see any prompt for a parameter. So if I save this, let me show you how it looks like without a label. So if you go to view data, you will be able to see the parameters, but the labels won't be there. So to fix that, what you can do, you can go to parameters and you can give them labels. Select BU name, and for the transaction number, you can select it as a transaction number and you can save it. Okay, and you can view the data now. Viewer. And you can see that the data is getting pulled now. But not just this. What is the advantage with what did we achieve by making these two options as parameters? Now, when I run the report, I don't need to always print 5001. I can print other transaction numbers as well. So I can say I can print 1001 and click on view. If that 1001 transaction number exists in Dinesh US Retail BU, it will get printed. So you could see 1001 transaction number getting printed now. And not only that, you also have an option to tag list of values. Okay, so what you can do is you can probably add in a couple of queries to pull the list of business units and the transaction numbers from the database tables and show it as a drop down here, so that you can directly pick up the values or pick up the BU name or a transaction number from a LOV instead of typing in the value, because this is currently a text box, right? So I don't know what are the valid transactions that exist in ERP Cloud instance. So I've just given it a hit. I've given it a try and I said 1001, and since the transaction number exists, it got printed. If I say 1002 and say if that transaction number doesn't exist, you won't probably get any data, right? So 1002 doesn't exist and it doesn't give you any data. So yes, you can make this data model look slightly better by adding list of values here. But adding a list of values here will not be of any use, because we are going to create a report for this data model and we are going to register that report as an ESS job. And the only person who will be running the report from here, from the only person who will be executing data model will be you as a developer, and you will also do it only when you are doing the build. So when you are doing the build, you can just take in a sample transaction, view the data, and then you can move on. You don't need to add in list of values here, but if you want, you can do that. Okay, but please bear in mind that the list of values that you create here will not get copied over into ESS job, because end of the day, business user is going to run ESS job. So we will, to this data model, we will create a report, and to that, and we will attach that report to an ESS job. And it will be this ESS job that we will execute, not the, it will be this ESS job that the business user will submit. Okay, will run the ESS job. And it works backwards the same way. So what will happen when business user triggers the ESS job? Or we'll get to it later on once we finish the other two steps as well. So on the ESS job also, you will create parameters again, and you will ensure that the order of the parameters and the number of the parameters matches with what you have in the data model. And there again, you have an option to tag the list of values. And that's where tagging list of values makes sense, because business user will be running the ESS job. So the only person running the data model will be you, and there is no need to create list of values in the data model. But if you want, you can do that as well. And how do you create list of values? Go to list of values section, click on the plus icon and add in the query. And we have two parameters, right? We have business unit name and we have transaction number, two parameters. And we need to display the list of values for them. What do we mean by list of values? If you add list of values, it will appear like a drop down, and when they click on it, they should be able to see all the business units that exist in the application. And when they click on transaction number, they should be able to see the transactions. Okay. So to do that, what we do is let me take you to a particular screen. So if I go to setup and maintenance, so the next question is, so yes, we know that we will need to display the list of values, right? And we need to display, pull the list of values for business unit and the transaction number. But there are two options that I can consider. So I can display all the business units, or I can display only the business units that this user has got access to, right? I'm not sure if the data, if the security sessions are over for you guys or not. But what happens is, after you create a user, you will give them explicit data access for each and every role. Say, for example, for Fusion.tech user, for accounts receivable manager, there would have been some business units for which this user would have been given access. Where do you figure out what business unit this user has got access? To figure that out, you can go into FSM screen, Functional Setup Manager, click on the tasks ribbon, go to global search, and you can search for manage data access for users. Search for the task again, and you can go to users with data access, and you can type in Fusion.tech, and you can type in the role as accounts receivable manager. Click OK, and you can do a search now. And when you search it, you could see that this particular user has got access to 3 business units: ELBBU, Dinesh US Retail BU, and Evosis Hospitality Corporation. This user has got access to 3 business units for accounts receivable manager role. So when we show the list of values for a business unit, does it make sense to show only these 3? That's because the user has got access to only these 3, right? So ideally, we should be seeing only these 3 BUs, not all the other BUs that exist in the instance. You might have hundreds of business units, but as a user, but from a security standpoint, this user has access to only 3 BUs, right? So it makes sense to display only these 3. So how do we get this information? So to get this information, again, the same story applies. You have to search for the tables that capture this information. So you don't have an easy way to figure out the table name, which is capturing the information you are viewing in the user interface. If it is probably e-business suite, you have an option to look at the view based on which or from which the data is getting pulled. And you can, if you look at the view definition, you can find the tables. But in ERP Cloud, you will get no clue from the user interface as to what table might store this information. So you will have to either do a Google search or look or explore Oracle documentation, or you can go to support.oracle.com. So I've shown you those options yesterday. So with those options, you try to identify the table which stores this information. And the table that stores this information is the user role data assignments. Okay, so if I copy this query and paste it in Notepad, okay, so the table, so we need a table that stores this information, and it is this table: functional user role data assignment. So this table stores the information that you are seeing on screen. And what do we need to do? There are 2 filters that we applied here to get this information, right? We applied a filter, a username filter, and we applied a role filter. So we need to apply these 2 filters on this table. So I joined users table. Per users is a table which stores user information. And what did what else did I add in there? So if you look at the join conditions, first I am querying per users table, and I am fetching the current username. So I'm fetching the username from a profile option. So this fndglobal.username will give, it will give back the username with which you have logged into the application. So if you have logged in as fusion.tech, this particular function or API will return fusion.tech. And we are querying per users table with a fusion.tech. And that user will have a GUID, a global unique ID. And with that global unique ID, you are going and checking in this table what are the role assignments. So for fusion.tech user, what are the role assignments? So basically, what are the roles? So that would give you all the roles apart from all the roles, including accounts receivable manager. So you might have, so if I take out this role and if I do a search, there might be other roles also for which a data access was given. So username, and if you apply a username filter on the roles table, that will give you these many rows. But I'm interested in all the rows. I'm interested only in the accounts receivable manager role. So what do? I will apply another filter. So on the role, there is a role name attribute or role name column. So I will search for only the accounts receivable manager role. And that means it's like applying this filter on top of the query. And that will give me only 3 rows. And out of these 3 rows, I want to get, I'm not interested in these attributes or columns. I'm interested only in the security context value. So this is nothing but a business unit. So to get that information, I say, so you have org ID in there. So you don't have, even though you are seeing business unit here, in this roles table, org ID of the business unit is stored. So you can get what is the business unit for that particular org ID by linking up another table called functional all business units, fun all business units _v. So there is a view that you can query to get the business unit name. Because this roles table, it will only have org ID, it will not have a business unit name. And since in the drop down I can't display the org IDs, I need to display the business unit names, right? So for that reason, I'm linking in a business unit table, and I'm linking using org ID to get the business unit name. So if I copy this, just to show you what will be the output of this, so I'll go ahead, copy this. I will add it as a new data set. So you go back to diagram. I will add it as a new data set. I'll delete it in a while. I'll change the data type to FSCM and I'll paste in the query. So if I paste in this query, click OK. Go to data tab, run the report, and you go to the table view. And if you scroll down, so you've got the first output for the first 4 queries, but if you scroll down, you could see output for another query as well. So what is the output for that for that query? You're seeing only the 3 business units. Why only 3 business units? That's because Fusion.tech user for receivables manager role, there are only 3 views he has got access to, and this is exactly matching with what you're seeing on screen here. So we want to display this as a list of values here in the dropdown so that user can pick one of those views and they can pick the transaction number from those views. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete this. We don't need this anymore. Delete one. And go to list of values. Add in a new query. And you say view name, SQL query. Select the data source as FSCM, and you can paste in the query and save it. And apart from business unit, we also need a transaction number, right? So we'll go ahead and add another parameter called transaction number. So this one. Transaction number LOV. So for BU name, you can call it as BU name LOV. Okay, so if you go to transaction number, so we need to pull the transaction numbers also, right? So to pull the transaction numbers, what I've done is I have used the same query. Which is pulling the list of business units. And to this query, I have added invoice table, which is RA customer transactional table. I've linked in this table to this query, and I have pulled all the transactions, or I need to pull all the transactions from all the business units that the user has got access to. How do I do it? I have another query which does the same, which does it. So if you look at this query, all I'm doing is pulling in the transaction number from the BUs that I have got access to. So if you look at the tables, these tables are exactly the same. So it is exactly the same query as this, but I have added in this table. Invoice table, and I am fetching the transactions that belong to the BU that I have got access to. So if I have access to 3 business units, go to the invoice table and fetch all the transactions from those 3 business units. So I have added in the table, and I have added in the join conditions with the org ID condition, and in the select statement, I need to pull. In the select statement, I'm pulling the transaction number and the BU name. Okay, so you copy this query and you can paste it in here. Change the data type to FSCM and paste in the query. So in case you're wondering, can't we link one list of values with another one? In the data model alone, you will be able to link up a transaction number with a business unit name. So what that means is, if you have got access to 3 business units, as the LOB query stands now, you will see 3 business units in the dropdown. And when you go to transaction number LOB, click on the dropdown, you will see all the transactions from all the business units. But in the data model, you can link up a transaction number LOB with a business unit name LOB. What you can do is you can add in another option saying pull only the transactions from the business unit name LOB or a business unit name that is selected. But you cannot achieve that when you create a parameter on the ESS job. So when you create a parameter on the ESS job, you cannot link one parameter with another. So in a business unit, you have something called $flex$, which you can use to link up one second parameter with the first one. Meaning, if I select Dinesh US Retail BU as a business unit, I could easily filter down the transactions to display only the. I can filter the list of values in the second parameter called transaction number to display only the transactions from Dinesh US Retail BU in a business unit. But in ERP Cloud, it's not possible. Okay, so I have added in this query the 2 queries. I have now 2 LOVs, and I go to these parameters, and I need to tag these LOVs to the parameters. How do I do it? I select a business unit name, and there is a parameter type there. First of all, you can mark both of them as mandatory. And for business unit name, you can change the parameter type to text. If it is text, it appears like this. So that's why you are typing in the BU name and the transaction number in a text box. But I don't want to appear like a text. I want it to appear like a drop down. So to do that, you have to change it to a menu option. And the moment you change it to menu option, you will see a few more attributes showing up. For BU name, click on the drop down and select the business unit name LOB. Save it. And do the same thing for transaction number. Change it to menu, and you can select the transaction number. Leave it like that, and click on save. And now, if you go and try to view the data, what do you see in there? It's not just text box anymore. You see a sort of a drop down. And if I click on the drop down, what do I see in there? I see 3 business units. Why only 3? Because I have got access to only 3 BUs. So I select Dinesh US Retail BU, and I have transaction number, right? And if I click on the drop down, I see all the transactions from these three BUs. And I can pick up 5001 and I can run the report. Okay. So for some reason, we're in this instance, we're facing some issues, or in the training institute instance, when we add LOVs in the data model. So we'll try to open up the data model again and run it. So go to view data, view it. So let me select another transaction info. Or let's do it this way. From the transaction number LOV, so it was a known issue. So we don't need, we have added BU name here as for a reason. We would need that in ESS job parameter, but we don't need it probably here. So we'll take off the BU name and you go to view data. And if you click on the drop down and if you select a different transaction and try to view the data, you will be able to see the transaction printed. So if you go to table view, you can see that we are printing this transaction number from Dinesh US Retail BU now. Okay, what was the change I did? I have taken out the business unit name from the second query, because you have in the data model, there is a restriction that you have to select only one column. You cannot have any description columns in the LOV you add in the data model. So I have taken out this BU name, and after I have taken it out, it is allowing me to run the report by selecting any transaction number from the three BUs I've got access to. And there are two more options, event triggers and flex fields. We cannot use them in ERP Cloud as a developers, but Oracle can use it. Why can't we use these two options? That's because we don't get access to the database, meaning you can't write a PLSQL package and compile it, and you cannot refer that PLSQL package in the event triggers. So in eBusiness Suite, what we usually do is, if it is a complex report, you write all the logic into PLSQL package, and you will invoke that package in a before report trigger. So that package gets executed before the report is executed, and all the complex logic would be executed from that package. And usually at the end of all the processing, you would populate data into a table, and you would keep the report logic as simple. You will just do a select star from the table and display the report output. But it's no longer possible. Because you can't compile a PLSQL packages, so you can't really use the event triggers and flex fields in many cases. And you've got bursting option as well. So this bursting will help you to deliver the output that is generated. In some cases, if you want to deliver the output that is generated to an SFTP server, or in case you need to upload the output that is generated to UCM, in such cases, you can plug in the bursting queries. So we'll come back to this in a while. And I'll show you how to deliver the files to multiple destinations. Okay. And for now, we have built this report, and we are in a good shape. But if you look at the report output, if you go to table view, yes, it is generating a report output. But if I try to export it, and before I export, there are two more tabs here. This is just for informational purpose. So if you go to structure, you will be able to see the hierarchical structure. Like you have AR invoice header, which is like a parent for all the other three queries. So if you expand it, you have invoice lines query, bill to customer details query, and ship to customer details query. Right? So these three are child attributes of invoice header. So, and you can see the relationship here between the groups, and you can also see the attributes again. So you will be able to basically see the structure of it. And if you go to code, what the data model or what BA server will do is, for all the actions that you perform in this particular screen in the diagram, it will generate a code. It will generate the code that it will execute in the backend. You cannot edit this. You cannot directly make changes in here. You will create your report by going into diagram, adding the data sets, etc., data links. But all of all the action that you perform in the diagram will be converted into an XML code, and this will be executed in the background. And now if you go back to data, view the report output. And if you try to export the output, let's try to export the output and see, because we need all the details, right? So let's see if we get the output in PDF format or not. So if you export it, you see that there is an XML output generated. So if I show it to you in the folder, what is the output generated? Okay, so this is the one that is created just now. So if I take this off, or if I open this, it is output in XML format. And if I open it up, and if I format the XML tags a little bit, so what do you see? The output is generated. Yes, it is printing the right transaction number from our right view, and I have invoice header, and within the invoice header there is a line section, there is a bill to section, and ship to details are also printed. But the output is printed in XML format. So this, whatever you're seeing on screen, this is called as XML format. And the XML format, it looks like this. It has a hierarchical structure, meaning you have one group within another group. And for each attribute, you have two tags. For each attribute, you have XML start tag and you have XML end tag. Say, for example, if you take currency code, this is a start tag for the currency code, and this is an end tag. How do you know which one is a start tag, which one is an end tag? You will have this slash before the end tag. So for every attribute, you have a start tag followed by value for that attribute, and you have an end tag. And the same logic applies for all the attributes. So you have a start tag and end tags for each attributes, and in between the start and end tags, you have the actual value. And the attributes will be enclosed in these brackets. Okay. And okay, so yes, for each attribute you have a start and end tag, but do you think it makes sense if we print this output, or print this in the output of ESS job? So if business user runs the report, if we print this straight to the output, it doesn't make much sense, right? And it's not easy to read and understand as well. So there comes a requirement to convert this XML into a more readable format, such as a CSV or a PDF document. Because end of the day, when what needs to be sent out to a customer is an output like this. We cannot send this output to customer. So we need to convert this XML into PDF, and that's where the report comes into picture. Okay. So if you look at, if you go back to the steps that we discussed yesterday. So what is step number 2? Building a report layout, right? So we have built a data model with SQL queries. Now we need to, and it has generated output in XML format, which is good for nothing in terms of reporting. We need to convert that into a readable format with the help of a report layout. And how do we do it? In ERP Cloud, there is a very handy feature. You have an option to auto-generate the report layout based on a data model. In eBusiness Suite, you have to you have to create a report layout from scratch. You didn't have an option, but in ERP Cloud, you don't need to worry. You can auto generate a report layout based on a data model, and once it is auto generated, you can tweak it to you can align the auto generated layout output with what you are seeing on screen. Okay, let's see how to do it. The way you auto generate a report layout is, so you go back to the data model, and before you auto generate a report layout, you will have to view the data and you will have to hit this button called Save as Sample Data. If you click on Save as Sample Data, you will get this confirmation that this XML output is saved as sample data. And where can you find that information? If you go to Properties tab, if you scroll down, you will see that there is a sample.xml file. And if you open it up, you will be able to see the data saved as a sample file. And if you format the XML, it is nothing but the same XML output that we have downloaded. Why is this important? This is important because when you auto-generate a report layout, BI server needs to know how many groups are there, what attributes are there, and what is the relationship between those attributes. So for it to understand all those things, so that it can auto-generate a report layout accurately, you have to perform this step of viewing the data and hitting this button called Save as Sample Data. That will save a sample.xml on the Properties tab. And after you do that, you can click on Create Report here. Okay. And when you click on Create Report, you get this sort of a Guide Me editor. You don't need to use this. So all you have to do on this screen is click on Cancel. Just click on Cancel. It asks for your confirmation. Just say yes. And that will bring you back into a blank screen, a blank report creation screen. So you can also come to this screen from a different navigation. From the main navigation option also, you can click on Create a Report. So I will show you another way to come to this screen. So we have come to this screen by clicking on Create Report from Data Model, right? Another way to create a report is you can do it by going through the data model, or you can also do it from the main navigation option. So you click on the main navigation option, and under Published Reporting, you see a report there. Click on it. And that will also create a report, and it will also bring you back into the same screen. But this time there is a difference. Earlier we have seen a data model, but now we don't have a data model. So you cancel it. Yes. You don't need to use a Guide Me editor. And here we are trying to create a report now. And the first step in the report creation is to select the data model for which you want to create a report. So you click on the search icon and you pick up the data model. Pick up the data model that you created. And then you have two options here. You have two options. The report layout, it will be in RTF format, rich text format. It is basically a Word document with XML tags inside it. So that is called as an RTF layout. So you have two options. You can generate RTF layout based on this selected data model. This is the auto generate option that I was talking about. This is a new option available in ERP Cloud, which saves quite a bit of time. And you have got another option which you can use to upload RTF documents. If you already have one, if you have already prepared a layout, you can upload it. So what we do is, I'll show you how to use both the options. First, what we do is we generate RTF layout based on this data model. And of course, RTF will be generated, but there would definitely be some changes required in that RTF document to align it with this layout. Because end of the day, this is the output the client is expecting, right? So we will have to align the auto-generated layout or make changes in the auto-generated layout in such a way that it generates this output or output in this format. Okay, so we'll see how to generate layout first, and then I'll show you how to upload it. So click on Generate RTF Layout option, and you can call it as auto generated layout and click on generate. And what do you see in there? There is an RTF document automatically generated based on the data model. And if I save this, I'll save it as a report. I'll say AR invoice print report. And I'll save it. Okay. And if I click on view report now, it is saying some invalid parameters, not particularly sure why. Let's change the parameters and run it. Okay. So you can see that the report output is generated, right? You can see the report output generated. But if you look at the output is generated this time not in an XML format, but if you look at here, it is generated in a HTML format. And if you click on the drop down, it is currently generated in HTML format, but I can generate the report output in other formats as well. Like I can generate the output in PDF, RTF, Excel, PowerPoint as well. And PDF output is what client is looking for. So if I click on PDF, it will generate a PDF output. So it has generated a PDF output. So what is the purpose of creating a report? And what did we achieve by creating this report? If I ask it this way, we were able to convert this XML output into a PDF output. But if you look at the PDF, if you look at the PDF document, a PDF output generated, obviously this is not something that client is looking for. Client is looking for an output like this, but the output is generated like this. So we need to edit this RTF document so that it generates an output like this. So how do we do it? Go back. And you can edit the report. And when we ran this report, it generated output in HTML by default, right? So where are those options coming from? Those options are coming from this view a list option. So if you click on view a list, we're currently in view thumbnails. So that's why you're seeing the thumbnails option. So if you click on view a list, you will be able to see the layout name, and you will be able to see the RTF template that is generated, the rich text format template, in case you are hearing it for the first time. And you can see the output formats that are enabled. So how many formats are enabled? So you see 3 formats and 2 more here. So that's why in the drop down, when you view the report output, in the drop down you could see only 5 output formats. That's because only those 5 output formats are enabled here. So if you want, you can also enable other formats as well, like this. Okay, so depending on what formats you want to see in the drop down, or what formats you want to enable, what output formats you want to enable for the report, you can select all of them here. And there will be a default format which will be used to generate the output by default. So when user runs the report, there has to be some default format, right? And that will be HTML by default, and you can change it. Say for example, if you want to make PDF as a default format, you can change it. And once you change it, save it, and you view the report output again. And this time you will notice that the output will be generated in a PDF format. So you change the transaction number and you click on apply. And you will notice that the output is generated in a PDF format. Right? That's because we have made this as a default format. Now let's go back to the original question. How do we download this template and make changes in it so that it generates an output that looks like this? So how do we do it? You edit the report. And you click on edit here, and that will download the template. That will download the RTF template. copy the RTF template, and you can go back to the folder. Let's create a new folder here. And what do we do? Let's also copy the XML that is generated and move it to the folder. So these are the reference ones. These were the documents of the previous batch. And here we're going to create another layout. So we will edit this layout, the RTF document. And if you look at this layout, it is looking like this. So there would definitely be some changes that we need to make. We need to make this or make changes in this so that it generates output in this format. So first thing, so we'll go through the changes one by one. Okay. So the first one is I need to take off the logo. I don't need Oracle logo. I need to plug in a client logo. So we don't have a client logo, so we'll plug in a Rainbow Training Institute logo. So how do we do it? You go into Insert Pictures, and I believe you have. Yeah, let me get a logo of the Training Institute. So here. Okay, so I've copied the logo of the Training Institute to that folder, and I have added in the logo. I can resize it a little bit, and I need to change the report name, and I can call it as, I'll go to the PDF. I'll call it as AR Invoice Print, and I'll increase the font size. I'll make it at least 80. And here the date and time is getting printed, so that's fine. That's absolutely fine. We can leave it as this. And if you look at this, this row is jammed against the first row, jammed against the line, right? So you don't have any space after the line before the heading. So to give a space before the line, so you select the entire row and you go to home page. There is something called as paragraph spacing. So you click on paragraph, and you can add in a space before and after the paragraph. So you can say give 3-point space before the paragraph, and you click on OK, and you will notice that there will be a little bit of space that gets added before the heading now. And you can also increase it if you want. Okay, so you can probably make it as 6 in case you think it makes sense. So the best thing with RTF is it is nothing but working with a Microsoft Word document. Okay, so all the properties or the way you make changes in the layout, it is as good as editing a Microsoft Word document. So that is the best thing, best part with RTF templates. So, and if you go back to the actual details, so if you want to see, you need to, there's one thing that you can do. So as you make the changes in the layout, there are 2 ways you can see the updated output. One way is you can upload this layout. You can upload this layout to the report in BI server. You can upload the layout here to the BI server, and then use that layout to generate the report output. And you can do this every time you make a change. But that might not be feasible, right? Because every time I make a small change, I want to view the output, and it's unnecessary overhead that I need to upload the layout, RTF layout to here, and then click on view output. So to do that, or to help you in that scenario, what you can do is there is a software called a BI Publisher Desktop. There is a software called BI Publisher Desktop. So you can download this software. You can download this software and you can install it. And once you install this software on your machines, if you open up a Microsoft Word document, and in case this software is installed correctly, successfully, you should be able to see a tab called BI Publisher in your Word documents. So you open it, and once you open it, you will have an option to load in sample XML. So you click on sample XML and you will be able to load in the data. So what data you want to load in there? I want to load in the XML output that is generated by the data model. So I'll select that and upload it. And you will get a confirmation that data is loaded successfully. And once the data is loaded, you go to BI Publisher again, and you can preview the output in any of these formats. So I can click on PDF and that will generate a PDF output. So you can see the PDF output generated straight away, which means I don't need to upload this report. I don't need to upload this report to the BI server every time I make a change. So I can make a change in the report. I can view the output straight away, and only after all the changes are done in the layout, as a last step, I will upload it to the BI server. That's a normal approach that we follow. Okay, and let's close this. So let's leave this open, and I go back to the layout. So a space of 3 points or 6 points is looking a bit too much. So let's change this to 3 points. And let's come down to the main section. So in XML, so if you view the output now, so if you click on PDF, a PDF output is generated. First, let's try to understand what RTF does in first place. Okay, so let's take this first table and try to understand what it does. So what do you have in the first column? You have currency code and you have USD getting printed here. So let's go back to the RTF template and see what do we have in there. It is basically a table. In fact, you've got 4 tables because you have 4 groups. And for each table, you had a header row. This is basically a header row, and this is nothing but a static text. So it is a currency code typed as a static word. And so this static header row is printed as is. So that's why you're seeing this header row. But if you look at the data row, so this is a data row. And if you look at the data row, you're seeing currency code, transaction date here, a sort of XML tags here. But these tags are not printed. Instead, what is printed is the actual value of those XML tags. So if you look at the first tag, what do you have in here? Currency code, right? So if I click on it, double click on it, what do I see? If I go to advanced tab, what do I see in there? I see a currency code mentioned like this. So what this XML tag will do is, so this is basically a tag that you use in RTF document to print the value of currency code. So what this will do is, this will go to the XML document, and in that XML document, it will look at the transaction, it will look at the currency code attribute or currency code tag, and it will pick up this value, and instead of this entire tag, or in place of this tag, the value of USD will be printed. Okay, so that's how you add in the XML tags. So you have XML tags generated automatically, and you have a header row, and the header row is printed as is, but these XML tags are replaced with the actual values when you generate a PDF output. That's why when you generate a PDF output, you could see the header row, but the actual XML tags are replaced with the actual values. Okay, and that's point number 1. So that's how you print. The actual values of fields. Actual XML tags are replaced with the actual values. Okay, and that's point number 1. So that's how you print. The actual values of fields. you have something called as you have a special tags in RTF that you might have to use. Say for example, this is invoice print, right? So you and this is an invoice header, and the next group is invoice lines. Invoice header, you will only have one header for invoice. You will not have multiple headers. But when it comes to lines, you might have multiple lines, right? So when you have multiple lines, so in this particular transaction has only one line, so it has printed only one line. But if this transaction have two lines, it would have printed two lines here. So there should be a way to tell XML or to tell RTF that there could be multiple lines. So please loop through the lines query and print whatever lines are there, right? So we need to basically loop through the lines query and print all the lines here. So you have the header row is same. There's no change for the lines query as well. But if you look at the XML tags are also same. So here you will find the XML tags of lines query. So if you look at the line section, you will have XML tags of these of G invoice line. So you have customer transaction ID, line number, quantity, unit price, amount, description, line type. So you have all these columns printed under lines. But you have another special tag here called G, and you have another tag called E. So what are these tags? These tags, so let me open the tag and show you what the tag exactly is. So let me go to advanced. Let me copy the tag here. And let me copy the end tag as well. And this is the end tag. So at the beginning, so this lines tags are printed in between a for each tag. So what we are saying is, so we are asking RTF document to loop through the G invoice lines query, G invoice lines group, because there could be multiple lines on an invoice. So if there are multiple lines, print all the lines. Don't just print first line and come out of the group. If there are multiple lines, loop through the line section. For each means for each invoice line, you print all these details. That is what we are mentioning in the RTF document with the help of this for each tag. So you start a for each loop and you end it here. And if there are multiple lines, those will be printed here. All the lines will be printed because you are looping through the invoice line section. So to replicate this, what I do was, let me make a small change in here. What I do was, since there is only one line on the invoice, let me just copy paste this. Let me change this line number to 2, quantity to 2, and unit price to 2000. Amount will be 4000, and I'll say invoice FPDI 2, and I'll change the total to 5000, and I'll save this XML output, and I will load this in. I go to BA Publisher, I go to sample XML, and I will load this in. Where is this saved? This is saved in TF15 AR invoice print data model. Okay, so let me load this in. Our data loaded successfully, and I want to view the output, so I go to BA Publisher and try to view the output. And if I view the output now, you will notice that yes, the invoice header is printed, but if you look at the lines query, you notice that since there are two lines, and since we have this for each loop, for each condition, it is looping through the group and it is printing both the lines in here. So that's because what we mentioned in at the beginning of this lines of this particular line. What did we say? For each line you have in G invoice lines group, print all these XML tags. That is what we are mentioning. So if you want to validate whether I'm saying is true or not, you just take out these conditions, take out the group conditions, and if you generate a PDF now, what do you see in there? So you had a two XML, 2 lines printed. And now when I have taken off the for each tag, you see only 1 line getting printed. So what that means is, since you didn't ask RTF to loop through the line section, it doesn't know whether multiple lines exist or not. So it has just printed the first line and it assumed that, yeah, that is all it has to do. Okay, so that's why when you auto-generate a layout, Oracle will already take care of all these things. So that is one of the biggest benefit of auto-generating a report layout. You don't need to worry about all these nitty-gritties of it. Okay, but you need to understand it as a developer. Okay, or as to how it works. And yes, Surya, I'm recording the session and it will be uploaded to your to the website as well. Okay, and so that's how the for each tags work. And after this, okay, now let's start aligning this report layout with a PDF document. So we know the basics of RTF now. So let's try to align the output, align this layout with the PDF document, with this sample output. Let me pull this out. Okay, and let me close the other outputs. Okay, and we want eventually the output to look like this. So for that, let's go to the first table. So let's fix one by one. Let's sort out one table at a time. And if you look at the output that is generated or RTF document, by default, it will include all the columns that you have in all the groups. Okay, so we used a customer transaction ID. We picked customer transaction ID in the header query and the lines query because we wanted to join these two queries with the help of this ID column. But auto generation template doesn't know why you have picked that column, right? By default, it includes all the columns. So we don't need customer transaction ID column. So I will take it off. You select the column and you delete it. And what columns do we need to print here? Transaction number, date, currency code, and business unit. Okay. So I can rearrange the columns a little bit. Transaction date, currency code. What I can do was, I also don't need these two columns. I also don't need a bill to ID and a ship to ID because I have added these columns so that I can link the invoice query with the bill to query and ship to query. I don't need to print them to the customer, right? Because customer would be least interested in what is the bill to customer ID or a ship to customer ID in ERP Cloud, right? So let's change this. So let's change this to a transaction number. Let me place this XML tag in here. And let me move. So what is the second column? Second column is transaction rate. Third column is currency code. So let's move. So let's change the third column to currency code. And the business unit name is the fourth column. So you type it in and edit it appropriately. Change the heading to business unit. And you change the first column to transaction date. You copy it, paste it in there. And we have 4 columns in a required format now. And you can rearrange them. Business unit, currency code, a transaction number, and a transaction date. Right? And if you look at the table, you can probably rearrange them a little bit. And if you look at the table, if you go to, and as you make the changes, you can generate the report output and preview it. You can keep reviewing it. So you click on BI Publisher and you click on PDF, that will generate an output. And what do you see in there? You see the output generated. But the table looks like it makes sense if we increase our table width a little bit, and it also makes sense if we align them to the middle, align the fields to the middle, right? So to make that change, you go to RTF document and you select the table rows, do a right click. So this is all about, so from here on, for the next 15 minutes, whatever I'm going to teach you, it is like a Microsoft Word class. So if you know how to work with a Microsoft Word document, you are an expert in building RTF document, as simple as that. So if you don't know MS Word, please learn it. So you click on table properties and you go to row, and for a row, for each row in the table, I want to specify a height. So you specify height and you can mention it as 0.2 and you can say exactly. And that this will ensure that the table row will be of at least a 0.2 height. So click OK. You will see that a table size height of each row has increased a little bit. So you can select all the columns now and you can align them to the middle. So you click on home page and you go to click on home option, align them to the middle. And you could also see that these are jammed against the start line, right? So you can put a 3-point space before the line so that it looks neat and clean. And if you look at the output, so you can print a PDF output again to see if the first table is looking fine or not. So this was quite irritating, the banner at the top. So I go to a PDF now and I could see the output generated. It's looking better. So I can probably make the size as 0.25. Table properties. I can make it as 0.25. Yeah, that's fine. It's looking good now. So the first table is fixed. So this is looking like what client has wanted, right? So we generate the output again to take the final confirmation. So you go to BA Publisher. And click on PDF, generate a PDF output. So the first table, this is looking like what client has given me for a sample output, right? The transaction number, date, currency code, business unit, and the values are also getting printed fine. Now let's go ahead and fix the second section. So the second is a bill to and a ship to section. We'll come to this in a moment, but let's fix the line section. So you have invoice lines printed, right? So this is the invoice lines query. And in the invoice lines query, yes, you have the for each tag. So you move the for each tag to the line number field and take off this customer transaction ID. Because we don't need IDs, right? We don't need IDs. So you take in take out the customer transaction ID and you realign the fields so that it looks like this. So the output should look like this: a line number, description, quantity. So you can change the headings from all caps to init caps, and you can say a description. You can take out the description and place it here. And what is the third column? Quantity. And you can put the quantity in the third column. And the fourth column is unit price. And fifth column is a line type, and sixth column is amount. So you can swap these columns as well. So you can move this to N, and you can say line. before E. And what else do you want to do? We will do the same things again, like we'll increase the width of the columns. So you select the table properties, specify height, 0.25 exactly. Click OK. And we will also align them to the middle. We will give 3-point spacing before, and we will also align it to the middle. And we will rearrange the columns a little bit. So we can drag and drop, we can realign the columns a little bit. Okay, and you can generate the output to see how it looks like. So you can go back to the Publisher, and you can click on the PDF output. So you look at the line section. The line section is looking good. It is looking as what client has wanted it. So let's open the, okay, I think it got added to the same tab as that of a sample output. So you see the output that is expected, and you see that the field is generating the output, or the template is generating the output in the same form. Okay, so that's good. So we need to fix these two tables now. And these two tables, even though they are added as tables, we don't need to display them in two separate tables. Instead, we need to display them this way. They have to be displayed as two columns in a single table, bill to and ship to. And within those columns again, we will print the details of the bill to customer. So what is a bill to customer name? What is account number? What is site? What is address? So to print this, what we do is we will insert a new table. So what we can probably do is we can copy this table, copy the table and paste it there. And we will merge these two rows. And we will call this as bill to. And we will merge these two columns. And I will call this as a ship to. Okay. And after this, let's also merge these two columns and merge these two columns or cells. Let's take out those the XML tags. We don't need them. So let's take out them. And how many columns do we need to have in this particular cell? In this particular cell, I need 2 columns and 4 rows. So I can split this. I can do a right click and I can click on split cells, and I can say 2 columns and how many rows? 4 rows, right? So I can say 4 rows and click on OK. And that will split the layout, or that will split it into the in the way that you have asked it to do. So it will generate 4 columns, or it has generated 4 rows. You can rearrange them a little bit, and you can do the same thing here as well. So you can do a right click and say split cells, say 2 columns, 4 rows, and you can enable borders. Borders and sharing. You can enable all the borders. And say all borders, click OK, and click on OK. And you can move this slightly to the right. And you can make these headings bold if you want, or you can leave it like that. And what do we need to print here? So we can make these fields, we can adjust the height of these fields. You can do a right click, table properties, you can say preferred width is 0.25 exactly. Sorry, it's not a preferred width, it's a preferred height, 0.25, and I'll say exactly, so that you won't have any differences between the line heights. So what do we want to call this? We need to call this as a name, a bill to customer name, and account number, site, and address. So select all this, and you can probably decrease the size a little bit. You can change it to 9. And you can copy the same and paste it here. And here you need to include the bill to details. So from the bill to table, again, I don't need this group tag, because invoice will have a single bill to customer and a single ship to customer. You will not have a case wherein there are multiple bill tos and multiple ship tos. So you take the bill to customer name XML tag, paste it here, and you do the same thing for ship to customer, paste it there, and a bill to account number, copy the XML tag and paste it there. Ship to account number, you copy it and paste it there. So for some reason or by mistake, if you have deleted these XML tags, or if these tables are deleted, nothing to worry. Don't think that you need to already have a table to copy those XML tags. You can add them manually. You can do that. Or you can go into a BA publisher and you can click on a field option here. In the BA publisher, you see a field option in there. Say, for example, if I want to include, the bill to site here. Okay, so I want to include the bill to site in here. So let's say I by mistake deleted this entire table. So I want to insert bill to site here. How do I do it? I go to BA publisher, click on field, and I can scroll down, and under G bill to, I can see a bill to site field. I can select it and I can click on insert, and that will insert the XML tag. As simple as that. So don't worry, even if this is deleted. So I'll copy this and replace it here, and I'll copy the ship to site and the address. So we need to print the bill to address 1, bill to city. We'll give a space and print a bill to city, and we'll print the postal code, the postal code, space, the country. Okay, so you can just slightly increase this column to see the details. Okay, and you can do the same thing for ship to as well. Paste in the ship to address, give a space, paste in the ship to city, press enter, paste in the postal code, give a space, and then print the ship to country. So that's how you print the ship to details. Okay, and you can, if you want to view the output to see how it looks like, let's take off these tables. We don't need them. Let's take them off, and we can view the output now. Click on BA Publisher, click on PDF again, and that will give you the report output. So it is giving you the report output details. So this transaction date is coming up. I don't know from where. Let's go back to the Word document, and there might be something in there. Yeah, the transaction date. Take it off, and yeah, you could see the details getting printed. But it looks like for these rows, a 0.25 is looking slightly bigger. So change the height. Specify the height to 0.2, not 0.25, and make it exactly. Yeah, and let's go ahead and print the output now. Go to BA Publisher and print the output in a PDF document. And what do you see in there? You see that the output is printed now in a format that client has asked for. So we are printing the bill to details and the ship to details, and we are printing the line section as well. And we will just align the amount as well with the total as a total here. So he wants a customer wants a total to be printed like this. So let's add in another row onto the Word document after the line section, and let's call it as total. So we select all these columns, and we hide the borders. We don't need them. And only for this particular cell, or instead of hiding all the borders, or you can do it. You can hide all the borders, and for this row alone, you can enable table properties, and you can enable the bottom border. Click OK, and that should put the border back on the table on this particular row. And for this one, you need a left border. So you do a right click, table properties, borders and shadings, and enable the left row or left border. You can select it that way, and you can enable a middle line. Click OK. And you want to call this as total. And you probably might want to print it in bold. And you have the transaction total that we have generated as an aggregate column. So you can print it there and display it. And we can take off this column as well. We don't need this. We don't need this table. And this is how you generate the report layout and align it with the customer layout that you have received from a client. Okay, so what did we do? We generated a report RTF document, and we have made changes to that RTF document and aligned the RTF document with a PDF output that client has shared with us. And it's looking good. And once the RTF document is ready, what we can do a save as. So we can copy this folder, and we can do a save as. And you can save it with a different name. We can call it as edited layout. Save it. And once it is saved, you can open it up. And what you can do is you can upload the layout. So go back to the BI server, go back into report, and you can add a new layout by using this option. So you click on add new layout. And this time, again, I've got the same options again. I have an option to auto-generate a layout again or upload an RTF document. But this time, I don't want to use this option because I already used it, generated an RTF document, and aligned it with a customer output or customer format. I have RTF document available with me to upload. So I use this upload option, and I will select the layout. I will select the layout that I have created. And I'll call it as edited layout. And the type as RTF template. And the locale as English. Click on upload. You can select it as English or English United States. And you can click on upload. And once you do that, the template should get uploaded. I think it has signed out, so it's signing back again. And we'll probably have to upload the template again. Edit the report. And add a new layout. Upload RTF. You can say edited layout. Click on choose file. RTF template. And the language as English United States. And click on upload. And now we have two templates, and you can make edited layout as a default one by going into view a list. And earlier we had only one layout, and that was auto-generated one, which was marked as default layout. But now I want to make edited layout as a default one. So I change the selection, and I'll also select the default output format as PDF for edited layout. And I will only enable HTML and PDF output for the new layout that I have created. I'll take out all other output options and I'll enable only HTML and PDF options. So I save this, go back to catalog, or I could have directly clicked on view report there. Edit the report. And you click on view report. And when you click on view report, output will get generated. So you pick up a transaction number and then click on apply. You will see that the output is generated with the edited layout now. But and this output is matching with what the client has asked for. Okay. And if you look at the auto-generated layout, you have another tab here because you had two layouts. If you click on auto-generated layout, it will generate the output using auto-generated layout. So this was the template that we auto-generated, and we aligned this template. We changed it to generate an output which looks neat and clean, like an edited layout, which looks like this. Okay, so we're done with step number 2 as well. So we're done with building a report, a data model, and we're done with building a report layout as well. And how are we running this report? We are running this report from the reports and analytics work area, right? So we are running it from a BI catalog. We have built the data model, we unit tested from here. We have built a report and we unit tested the report also from the BI server itself. But for a business user to run this report, we cannot ask him to come here and run it. We have an easy option available, which is to register this report as an ESS job. Okay, one very important point. Once you create a report, so first you create a data model, and based on the data model, you create a report and you register the report as an ESS job, so that when user submits ESS job, the report will get triggered and report will run the data model internally, and the data model will go and fetch the data from the database. XML output will be generated by data model with the data fetched from database. It will throw that XML output to report. The report will consume that XML output. It will generate the output in PDF format and it will throw it back to ESS job. That's a normal flow. And let's register ESS job for this report and let's run it from the application now. And how do we do it? You go back into the application. And go to home page. I'll show you the navigation from the home page. So you go to setup and maintenance. So from the home page, you go to setup, you click on the drop down and you have to go to setup and maintenance. That will take you to FSM screen. And you click on the arrow mark here, click on the task ribbon, click on search, and you will have to search for manage enterprise job. So search for this particular string, manage enterprise percentage job percentage. Do a search. You will get 3 tasks, and these 3 tasks help you. You can use them to define ESS jobs, to define enterprise scheduler jobs. But why 3 tasks? Because you might be defining a job for a different application, right? So if you are defining a job for a financial or supply chain management, you can use the second task. If you are creating a report and registering ESS job for HCM report, you can use the third task. If it's a CRM, use the first task. So since this report is AR invoice print report, I will use the financial supply chain management related task. Click on it. And you will see the list of ESS jobs that exist in the instance, enterprise scheduler jobs that exist in the instance. You can create a new one by clicking on the plus icon. Let's see, TF15 AR invoice print report. I'll give a short name, TF15 AR invoice print report. And you can give a path. So this path, it doesn't really matter what you enter here. It is basically used by Oracle to store the ESS job definition. So what we usually follow is we follow a path like this. So if it's related to financials, we say /fin, and if it's related to AR module, we use AR here. If it is AP, you use AP. So that's how we normally use a path /fin/AR. And you don't need to fill in other optional parameters. You go to job application, click on the drop down and pick up FSCM ESS, because this is a report that belongs to financials. So select FSCM ESS and you select the job type as BIP job type. And you will notice that there is a report ID that gets enabled, which is a mandatory one. And this is where you link the report that you have created earlier. So you link the report that you created in BA server to the ESS job with the help of this column. So in the report ID, you need to mention the path of this particular report. And please pay attention, guys. 8 out of 10 students make a mistake here and they come back to me saying that I did everything as you said, but ESS job is ending in error. They would definitely have missed one of the steps that I said. So I said you need to give the report layout or report path in the report ID column, right? So there is a specific format in which you need to pass in that value. So you click on more, click on properties, and you copy this location, copy the location, paste it in there, and you copy the report name, put a slash at the end, and put in the report name. So if you use this report path as is, it will not work. There are 2 changes you need to make to this path. First change, you have to take out this shade. You don't need to use a shade in the path, because by default ESS jobs will search for your executable in the shade folders itself. You don't need to let it know that go and search in the shade folders. It will automatically do it. So if you add shade, it becomes a duplicate. It will go to shade folders and it will search for a folder called shade within shade folders. So take out shade. So this is the first change. And another change is you need to use an extension called .xdo. Okay, so 2 changes: take out shade path and add an extension of .xdo. If you miss either of them, the ESS job will end in error saying that it can't find the report. Okay, so copy this path, go back to ESS job, paste it in there, and save and close. So we need to define the parameters, but before we define the parameters, we will create a list of value sources for the parameters, and then we will come back and define the parameters on the ESS job, right? Because this report will have 2 parameters, right? Or it needs 2 parameters, the business unit name and the transaction number. So to those 2 parameters, I would like to give user a drop down. I don't want to give him a text box like this. I want to give him a drop down or a list of values. So for that, I need to create a list of value source first for both the parameters. And then we go ahead and define parameters, a couple of parameters here on the ESS job, and we will link up those list of values. So let the ESS job definition get saved. And what queries do you use to create list of values? We'll use the same queries that we have used to create list of values in the data model. I've given the same queries in PPT also. So these are the 2 queries. So you can use them. You can use them as is. It's still saving the job definition. It usually takes a bit of time here. Don't cancel it. It takes a bit of time here. When you're doing it also, please wait for a couple of minutes there. Okay, so the job definition is saved now. So let's go to manage list of value sources and let's create a list of value source. Click on the plus icon and select the application name. It is receivables. And give it a name. So you can say BU name LOV. And it's a user defined LOV type. And you get an option to plug in the query and you paste in the query that I have given in the PPT. And you click on save and close. Okay, there was a bug in the application. So there was a bug in this application. So what does it say? It says error during a query execution. So, but I don't think we have any errors in this particular query. We were able to execute it directly from a data model successfully, right? So let me give it a try with this query. This query we know has it has worked in the application, right? So let's go ahead and try it. But you could see that it is added here. Search for receivables and do a search. Okay, so we have created LOVs earlier for many other batches, but off late what we did notice is there was some bug which is not letting us create a list of value sources. I'm not particularly sure when that gets resolved. So click on the plus icon. I'll just give one more try with this same query that has worked in the data model, but obviously it should work here. If it doesn't work, then we'll go ahead and pick up an existing list of value source. Pick the receivables, and you can say TF15 BU name LOV. Change it to user defined and paste in the query. Okay, so there is a mistake here. We don't need RA customer transactional table and we don't need this also. So it's basically this query. Click on save and close. Okay, so yeah, we're getting a weird error here, so there's nothing much we can do about it. So what we can do is I will pick up one of the LOVs that already exists. Say for example, you have this FT5, right? This, okay, what do we pick up? We have this FT5 AR transaction number LOV and BU LOV. So if you look at these LOVs, if you look at FT5 BU LOV, it is created with the exact same query that I have shown you. So if you look at the query, it is nothing but the same query that I have shown you in here. Okay, so when we didn't have the bug, it used to let us create a list of values. So it has, we were able to successfully create list of values. So you see the query, nothing has changed in it. But now it's not letting us create it. So we'll go ahead and use these LOVs that we created for FT5 batch, FT5 BU LOV, and we will use FT5 AR transaction number LOV to define the parameters. You have two options here again, a BU name and the transaction number. On this one, we'll go ahead and pick up the AR transaction number LOV because we need the BU name as well. So we'll go back to the job definition, search for the job that we created, and we'll define two parameters. Edit the job add in a parameter, click on the plus icon. And say business unit. Data type is string. And the page element is a list of values. So here you can whether you want to create it as a text box or a list of values or choice list. Choice list and list of values basically work the same way. If you pick choice list or list of values, you can select the list of values source that you have defined. So I've selected list of values so that it appears like a drop down like this. And I need to select the source that I have created. So I'll use FT5BU LOV as a list of value source for the business unit parameter. And there is a business unit attribute in there. I want to use it and display it there. And I will also select the same as display parameter. I can give a default value if I want, or I can leave it blank. I can make it as a required parameter. And if I want to hide this parameter, I can do that by clicking on this. If you click on this, it will become a hidden parameter. I can save and close. Or if I have another parameter to add, I can click on save and create another. So let's use this because we need to create a transaction number parameter as well. And let's create a transaction number parameter. String data type, choice list. So the list of values. And click on the drop down and we need to pick up FT5 transaction number, TRX number. Okay, pick it up and select the transaction number as an attribute. And for the display attribute, select both the transaction number as well as BU name. We are doing this on purpose. I'll explain why. You can set up a default value if you want, mark it as required, and click on save and close. And one very important point is, which is usually missed by the students. So the parameter sequence or the number of parameters and the sequence of parameters on the ESS job should exactly match with the report parameters. So if you open the report, what is the parameter sequence? BU name and the transaction number, right? So it should match the parameter sequence should be same on the job as well. So BU name should be the first parameter because the parameters from the ESS job will be passed in sequence to a report. So if I leave this as is, a transaction number will be passed as business unit and a business unit will be passed as a transaction number and we won't get any output. So let's fix this. How do we fix this? I want to make business unit as a first parameter. So select the business unit and you have arrow marks here to move them up and down. So you move it up and now the parameter sequence is matching. Click on save and close. And the final step is to run the ESS job. And with this, we'll close today's session. And what do we need to do? We need to run the report to see the output that is generated. Go back to home page. And you go to schedule process. Schedule a new process. And you can search for TF15. There should be only one job. Click OK. You see two parameters in there, both mandatory. And in the business unit dropdown, if you click on the dropdown, you pick one of the BU. And in the transaction number dropdown, you click on it. And as I mentioned, you cannot filter the transaction numbers based on business unit you have selected. So at max, what you can do is we are restricting this parameter to display only the transactions from the BUs that I have got access to. So I have access to 3 BUs. So this LOV will display transactions from all the 3 BUs. So if I click on the dropdown, and since a specific transaction can exist in multiple BUs, to assist the user with picking the right transaction number, so we are printing the business unit as well. So say, for example, if I search for 5001, or say, for example, I want to print, say, this transaction. So this transaction exists in ELB BU and Dinesh US Retail BU. So if I had not printed BU name in the transaction number LOV as a description parameter, you would see this transaction number alone twice. So you don't know which one belongs to which BU. So that's why we have added BU name as a description column. So this is coming from a list of values query that we have used. We are selecting transaction number as well as business unit name. Okay. So you pick the transaction number that you want to print, pick it up, click OK, and you can submit it. And when you submit it, what happens? ESS job will kick off the report. It will kick off the report, and the report will kick off the data model. Data model will fetch the data from database in XML format. It will be thrown back to report. Report will convert that XML into PDF, and it will throw that output back to ESS job. Okay, that's a sequence. So you refresh the request section here, and you see that the request completed successfully. Click on it, and if you scroll down, you will be able to see the output generated. You can see the log file, and you can see the XML data here under diagnostic log. And this is where you see the report output. And the report output is generated with edited layout and in PDF format, because edited layout is a default format. And for that layout, PDF is a default output format. And if you click on it, you will be able to see the output generated. And you can download it and see the output. And if you open up the output, it is looking as per the client requirement. Right? So this is how you go ahead and build a BIP report, build the data model, build the report layout, and register it as an ESS job. And on the ESS jobs, there are some advanced features, like say, for example, if you want, this is a report, and or say, think of an ESS job that you want to schedule. So this ESS job, since it's a report, it will always be run on demand. Whenever there is a need to print a transaction number, business user will run the report, will run the ESS job. But in some cases, if you want the ESS job to be scheduled, those options will be available in the advanced options. So say, for example, if I want to schedule this job, it doesn't make sense to schedule a report, but if it is an ESS job that you want to schedule, you can select the parameters. And you can go to advanced. We are looking at the basic options now. And in the basic options, you will only see parameters tab. But if you click on advanced, you will see 3 more tabs in there. A schedule, output, and notification. And if you go to schedule, that is where you have an option to schedule the job. So by default, it will be run as soon as possible. You can click on using a schedule, and you can pick up any schedule that you want. You can schedule to run once, or based on minutes, or every hour. You can run it to schedule every day, week, monthly, yearly, or you can come up with your own schedule as well. Okay. And you have output tab as well, which will help you to generate output in a format other than a default layout. Say, for example, if client wants to generate output with an auto-generated layout instead of the edited layout, what they can do, they can click on the plus icon. They will see edited layout here. And if they click on the drop down, they will say auto-generated layout as well. They can click on auto-generated layout, and they can also change the format as well if they want. And if you go to the notification tab, you have an option to add in a notification section here. So especially if it is a scheduled job, if you're scheduling a job to run every 5 minutes, nobody would care to monitor each and every request that gets triggered after 5 minutes, right? So in such case, what you usually do, you can set up a notification. You can say, whenever this job errors out, or whenever this job errors out or ends in warning, let a Fusion.func user know in case the job ends in warning or error. So you can add a condition like this. So this way, if any particular request, any particular scheduled request of this ESS job ends in error or warning, this user will be notified. Okay, so these are the advanced options. Any questions, guys? Any questions in what we covered? So there are a couple of topics to discuss on the BIP reports. I have to explain the migration part and the security part. but we will cover this on next Saturday. So any questions, guys? Any questions on what we covered today? Okay, I'll take it as no. Please do practice, and in case you have any questions, you can let me know on next Saturday. Thank you, guys.